Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian from the Association of the United States Army's annual conference and trade show in Washington, D.C., and we have with us one visitor from Europe, Colonel Greg Anderson, who's the commander of the 173rd Brigade, headquartered in Vicenza, Italy, but also in Germany. And we've also got Colonel Phil Brooks, who's the commander of the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, who's from sunny Fort Stewart, Georgia, but is part of the rotational force. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Vago. Good to be here.
So I want to start with you. You know, you're a resident unit in Europe. The first thing I want to say is that, you know, obviously you guys are both key in the entire European reassurance initiative to, you know, bolster U.S. capabilities there. Tell us how life has changed for you and for your unit in the past couple of years, given the renewed focus on operations and deterrence in Europe.
So 2014, the world changed in Europe significantly, definitely for the brigade. We were returning back from Afghanistan and we quickly had to adjust to a new threat as Russia annexed Crimea. And so the 173rd is a light airborne brigade, could rapidly, and forward deployed, could rapidly respond to this emerging crisis in 2014. Since then, in the last 2 years, we have gone from coin-centric operations to working now closely with NATO allies, NATO partners, to develop, first to assure them that America was there and we were behind them and would support them. And now we're moving towards actually deterrence to hopefully show enough capability, demonstrate strength to deter war.
And you are part of that initiative, right? Because you are a pretty serious unit, and so there's sometimes a misnomer about exactly how much power you're bringing there on a rotational basis. Talk to us a little bit about some of the capabilities that you brought to Europe, and what are some of the things you've been doing while you've been there?
Okay, well, thanks, Vago. As this is our third rotation, we just concluded our third rotation to Europe. We started last spring, April through June. We came back September through December, and we just finished a 6-month rotation. The Armored Brigade obviously brings tanks, Bradleys, the Paladin weapon systems to Europe, back to Europe, and a lot of combat power. And there were a lot of firsts here in the last 3 rotations that we've executed. So the first time we fired Abrams tanks in Estonia, Lithuania, Georgia, and multiple rotations throughout the Baltics. The ability to mass tanks and Bradleys and Paladins in Poland during Anaconda 16 with our allies and conduct live fire exercises and situational tactical exercises there in Poland. So a great opportunity to train, generate readiness at the platoon and company level while we assure our allies that we're here as a part of the collective commitment to the defense.
How, from an exercise standpoint, you know, you mentioned being all over the continent. You guys are doing a similar sort of thing. What's, you know, how much higher is the rate of exercises that you guys are conducting now?
Pretty high. So we are almost constantly in a constant state of exercising because there's 28 members of NATO and multiple partners, and we have got a piece to exercise and train with both. Really across the board. What's probably the most important part of the exercising is working what we call interoperability, learning how to train and conduct operations with same secure communications. Can we see the same intel picture? Can we conduct fire missions as partners and allies? And so these exercises are frequent, but really designed to improve trust, obviously, within the NATO alliance but really interoperability. Can we fight together as a team?
You know, you guys are doing that on a light level, and you're part of the home team. But for you guys, how long has it been since some of your guys have done combined tanks, combined armor operations with allied forces, the sort of stuff that was very, very commonplace during the Cold War?
Yeah, well, in the last year and a half, we have done it consistently, not just bilateral in each of the countries, but in Hohenfels, Germany, at the Combat Training Center there, we've conducted an exercise, Combined Resolve, 4 times now with multinational allies, with their Rosamax from Poland, with the Romanian BTRs, and all of the mechanized equipment. So we've had the opportunity now to have 4 training repetitions as we transition to the decisive action training environment. And so it's been a great opportunity, and multiple bilateral exercises in countries from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, as General Hodges likes to refer to it as.
Do you, one of the problems was, mobility and crossing borders. We talked to General Hodges, and he said, for example, the Poles have done a tremendous job in making it easier to move forces across borders. What are still some of the challenges that still have to be worked out, especially, these countries may be NATO countries, but it's not quite as open borders as it used to be when you're trying to move equipment. What are some of the logistical, there were flatbed issues, there were HET issues, there were rail car issues. Are these getting resolved from the standpoint of guys who've actually got to move equipment around?
Yeah, well, and General Hodges likes to refer to it as a military Schengen zone. And we had multiple rail car requirements for an armored brigade because you can't just drive a tank down the highway. There are a limited number of American heavy equipment trucks there are a limited number of rail cars. The RAF Brigade, the Regionally Allocated Force Brigade, has built a demand signal now that General Hodges has been able to take back to the industry so that we work those political issues as well as equipping issues to be able to rapidly assemble an Armored Brigade Combat Team en masse in any country when required.
Yeah, speed of assembly and speed of movement is a critical piece of the deterrent strategy to demonstrate we can close quickly on any of your designs in a crisis. And so there's a lot of work to be done, whether it's rail and for my airports of departure, the A2AD threat as part of that ability to interdict our speed of assembly and response. And so we exercise it. There's still a tremendous amount of work to be done, though, across the team.
You mentioned anti-access area denial, A2AD, which is obviously, something the Russians have been investing quite a lot of money in, whether it's on the electronic warfare side, whether it's on strike missile side. One of the big questions, and I wanted to get your guys' take on this, right? One of the Russian doctrinal things is, do a lot of heavy EW, do a disrupted comms, sort of understand Chinese doctrine is also, hey, these guys are very dependent on satellites, on space, on comms and intel. Are you guys doing the kind of real-world training, MCON Alpha kind of stuff, where nobody's emitting, but you guys are still doing, being able to mass forces, to be able to move, to communicate, and rely pretty much on mission command and commander's intent to know how to execute a complex operation?
So Phil mentioned the Joint Multinational Readiness Center, JMRC at Hohenfels. They have a threat, a hybrid threat that can replicate threats in the electromagnetic spectrum, UAVs, rapid precision fires, and also while you're fighting guerrillas at the same time in soft. So we train against that threat, and we're learning a bunch and relearning even more. Our mission command nodes in Afghanistan were big, giant, immovable objects filled with digital data and information flow. Now they're small, they're hidden. We emit reports and orders, and then we rapidly displace. We spend tons of time camouflaging, hiding from UAVs, and so we've got a long ways to go, Vago, but we understand the threat, and we're trying to get to the point where we can mitigate it.
Yeah, Vago, I would just emphasize the fact that it's hard to hide a tank. It's hard to hide a Bradley fighting vehicle, and the use of camouflage netting has exponentially expanded over the last 3 rotations across the Raider Brigade. So the ability to use the terrain, use the forestry to camouflage these vehicles, soldiers have really learned a lot. And then the dispersion of that so that there's not one critical target. We've really learned a lot. We're continuing to do the camouflage and dispersion. We did it at the Joint Multinational Readiness Center, and we'll continue that as we transition to the National Training Center in the spring.
That's right. Real rotations are back. Thank you very much, Budget Control Act. So, I'm sure that you guys are really, really eager to get there.
We are. I'll tell you, the sustained readiness of the Army now, the operational tempo is higher, but we love the repetitions and the blocking and tackling that the Chief Staff referred to. There's no greater place to generate leader readiness as a part of the regionally allocated force, because you get those repetitions through the gunnery exercises with the Paladins and the tanks and the Bradleys at the crew and platoon level throughout Europe, and so it's been a great rotation.
I want to start with you, but also then go to you because you mentioned the Paladin, and that's a great new capability. The M109A7 is coming online. But what are the specific equipment that you guys find that you need? You know, General Hodges has been talking about select capabilities and getting them, you know, whether it's improved fires or anything. What are some of the things that you guys have on your wish list that you're pushing up through to General Hodges and then up to Headquarters Army?
So for an airborne brigade, you know, an airborne assault to seize key terrain and then rapidly and be able to defend it is something that I'm going to be expected to do. In the new hybrid threat, especially in Europe, having the ability to hold that terrain with airborne engineer assets, short-range air defense, and additional communications that can enable this mission command against a Russian-style hybrid electronic warfare threat. Those are the areas we're in most need and trying to work to develop.
Additional armor. You know.
More tanks will cure any problem you have.
Yes, and of course that comes with increased complexity and the ability to traffic across Eastern Europe. But the reactive armor to Europe will be a great benefit as it applies to survivability of the tanks and the Bradleys.
When you guys look, and this would be the last question, even though I think I could spend at least another hour talking to both of you, but you know, as you look at what the Russian capabilities, what do you guys see that has you reconsidering, okay, so they're doing that, holy crap, they're doing that, or okay, yeah, you know, I got that taken care of. What are some of the things that you as professional soldiers that are in that theater, when you see them doing it, make you go, hey, that's pretty good, and do you feel confident that you can handle anything that comes your way?
So the thing that I'm probably most concerned about is their ability to quickly find us through electronic or UAV means and then put precision fires. And so we work very hard to be able to counter that. The good news is we've learned a lot from our friends in Ukraine, and we are taking their hard-learned lessons to task, and we're training, and we'll be ready for it because we see it before we have to experience it.
I concur with Greg. The ability to provide fires when a target is identified in that environment, in a decisive action environment, rapidly with our allies is an ongoing challenge, one that General Hodges also echoes. And so as we acquire a target, the ability to process that digitally through a U.S. radar to an allied fire direction center, and then finally to a firing platform, it's one of the key critical aspects that we're going to have to continue to fight as we go forward.
One last question. So since both of you depend much more on the Air Force, but both of you depend on the Air Force, how are you bringing the Air Force into this? Because obviously that's, you know, sort of the high power overwatch over everybody, right? Whether it's from, you know, from a movement standpoint, whether or not it's from a close air support standpoint. How are you guys integrating the Air Force in some of these exercises to get you back to a total air-land team? Although you could say you guys had a total air-land team when you were in Afghanistan as well.
We don't have to ask them to come. They come willingly. They're there forward with us. I mean, we rely, it is a total joint multinational fight. That's what being in Europe has taught me more than anything. It's a team in every direction. Our Air Force partners, whether it's fires, whether it's mobility, they are there in the thick of it, or on the ground with us too, providing terminal controls in the joint fires piece.
And same for me. I mean, we have the Joint Tactical Air Control parties throughout my formation. We require the Air Force for the strategic airlift of bringing some of our equipment back and forth from Fort Stewart, Georgia, as a regionally allocated force. But the close air support in all of our combined arms live fire exercises have been critical so that we integrate all of the enablers and train as we fight.
I lied. I have one last question. Do you guys have enough combat engineering, enough bridging? You know, General Hodges pointed out there are 8 rivers between us and wherever sometimes we need to get to, and the bridges aren't the kind of bridges you used to have in the Cold War that were designed to take tanks going over them and heavy equipment. Do you have enough heavy equipment to get heavy equipment across bad terrain?
I'll take it first since I have the Armored Brigade, and the answer is no. But we rely on our multi-component. So the Reserve and Guard during Poland, the Anaconda exercise was a key aspect of that. The German-British bridge, we rely on our allies to move across those rivers and all those gap crossings. And we had the opportunity to conduct 4 gap crossings, none of which involved the United States Army bridge. And so we rely on our allies to be able to move in that environment.
One of the rules of warfare is you can never have enough engineers. I think every Army's learned that. So on the airborne side, for the airborne assault piece, I think we have an adequate number to conduct rapid runway repair if we have to take airfields down and seize them for operation. But for protection, for mobility, especially against the Russian hybrid style threat, the more equipment we can have to rapidly dig in and protect our forces from the threat is something we're interested in. We don't do many bridge crossings based on our design, but you know, whether we're establishing a disruption zone, a defense, you know, using demolitions or mines to help us counter a threat, we need more, and we need more training in it.
Gentlemen, thanks very, very much. Best of luck to you, and we look forward to coming over there, getting in the field, and actually getting dirty with you guys.
Okay. Excellent. Can't wait.
Hey, thanks again, Vago. We appreciate it.